We'll start Category B by going into more details about the regulations, rules, references, and materials for skydiving. The FAA administers Part 105 of the Code of Federal Regulations related to parachuting. The FAA also creates advisory circulars that explain in more detail the rules that are part of the Code of Federal Regulations. The USPA also administers the training, licenses, ratings, and memberships of skydiving in the United States and around the world. They produce the Skydiver's Information Manual, known as the SIM, and we'll talk a little bit about how that is organized. The Code of Federal Regulations covers all federal regulation. Title 14 of the CFRs covers aeronautics and space. The FAA is responsible for Parts 1 through 199 of Title 14 of the Code of Federal Regulations. Of all the parts that the FAA is responsible for, skydivers are mostly concerned with Part 61, Part 91, and Part 105. Part 61 covers the certification and licensing of pilots. This includes what it takes to get a commercial pilot's license and what's required to conduct commercial flight operations. Part 91 is a list of general operating flight rules that pilots must follow. The FAA is responsible for Parts 1 through 199 of Title 14 of the Code of Federal Regulations. Part 105 includes information the FAA will want skydivers to be aware of or familiar with. Not all of the information here has to do with you as a student or an individual skydiver, but it all relates to skydiving, even to the extent of the radio communication required from the jump pilot to air traffic control. So be familiar with the information here, but also understand that not all of it will apply to you on every single jump. Some of the information contained here has to deal with tandem instructors, static line instructors, and then foreign jumpers in the US. So these are general operating rules from the FAA. Some of the sections will apply to you, some of them may not, but it's good to be familiar with what's included in Part 105. The FAA also creates advisory circulars, which are a more detailed explanation of some of the regulations that they have created. Two advisory circulars to be aware of are AC 105-2 regarding sport parachuting and AC 90-66 non-towered airport operations. If you have some free time and want to do some light reading, you can look up either of these advisory circulars. AC 90-66 includes information about how parachutes maintain separation from other aircraft in the traffic pattern. If we look at the bottom graphic to the right, imagine we are about 5,000 feet above the airport looking straight down. Most parachutes are deployed within about half mile of the runway. Most aircraft fly a traffic pattern that is about 3/4 of a mile to 1 mile away from the runway. In the blue circle, that creates an inner area about half a mile radius where parachutes can generally fly without conflict of other aircraft. A normal traffic pattern for aircraft is to fly about 1,000 feet above the ground in the rectangular traffic pattern with the same downwind base and final to the runway that jumpers fly. The difference is that aircraft flying so much faster have a much wider landing pattern farther away from the runway. If you find yourself where the red X is, more than half a mile away from the runway at about 1,000 feet, you need to be very cautious and keep the airspace clear around you and look for any other aircraft in the traffic pattern. From the top graphic, we can see a side view of the parachute opening zone. This is the half-mile radius, and as you get lower and lower in altitude, you're going to start working your way back to the landing zone. Now we're going to switch gears to talk about what the United States Parachute Association covers in their Skydiver's Information Manual called the SIM. The SIM contains information for all skydivers, not just students. So with the way it's organized, I don't recommend starting on page 1 and reading all the way through. There are certain sections that I would recommend starting with as a student. Section 2 of the SIM, the basic safety requirements, apply to all skydivers, and there are a few sections that are specific to student skydivers. From Section 2 of the SIM, the BSRs, D covers age requirements. All skydivers must be at least 18 years old. Section F, no jumping under the influence of drugs or alcohol. And G, related specifically to student skydivers. Student jumps must be conducted under the supervision of a USPA instructor. The USPA classifies student training into two categories. There's non-method specific and then method specific training. Non-method specific training is training that applies to all students no matter what type of training method you're doing. Whether you're a tandem student, a static line student, an IED student, or AFF student, it's the same information that applies all students. Non-method specific training can be conducted by a USPA instructor or a coach under the supervision of a USPA instructor. Method specific training is related to IED and static line, tandem students, and AFF students differently. Only a USPA instructor with that specific rating can teach the method specific portions. Section 4 of the SIM is the Integrated Student Program, ISP. This includes the categories A through H. Category A is the first jump course that you attended at the drop zone. Categories A through H cover all the information that you need to know for the 25 jumps to get your skydiving A license. Section 4 of the SIM, the Integrated Student Program, is where I recommend starting reading the SIM. Start with Category A, which will be a review of your first jump course, and then read through the categories A through H to get an idea of what's coming in your next jumps.